Elsa pressed her scaled snout against the grimy storefront window, her breath fogging the glass. Inside, Mr. Harrigan's pawn shop gleamed with the detritus of 1,000 desperate lives, wedding rings, obsolete data tablets, and there, on the middle shelf, her collection of crystalline dragon figurines that her mother had carved for her 7th hatch day. The sign above them read, "Fine crystal work, 15 credits each." She had sold them for 5. David Chen noticed the small dragon on his morning commute to the terraforming station. At first, he thought she was a discarded toy, some rich kid's genetically modified pet left behind when the novelty wore off. But dragons, even the small ones, didn't exist as pets. They were sapient, protected under galactic concordat law, which meant this child was alone. He stopped walking. The dragon turned from the window, and David saw her face properly for the first time. She couldn't have been more than 9 standard years old, her crimson scales dulled by malnutrition, her wings tucked tight against her emaciated frame. She wore a tattered thermal blanket like a cloak, and her golden eyes held the exhausted awareness of someone who had already learned that the universe was neither fair nor kind. "Are you lost?" David asked, crouching to her level. Elsa's tail wrapped defensively around her legs. "No, I know exactly where I am. Sector 7, Commercial District, New Brasilia Colony." Her voice carried the precise diction of someone educated beyond her years, but her words trembled with barely suppressed hunger. "Where are your parents?" "Dead. Atmospheric failure on transport vessel Crimson Wing 3 months ago. 847 casualties." She recited the facts like reading from a memorial plaque. "I've been managing." David glanced at the pawn shop. "By selling your belongings." "That's what humans do, isn't it? Convert assets to liquid currency for survival." Elsa lifted her chin with defiant pride. "I'm quite good at mathematics. I budget carefully." "And when you run out of things to sell?" The question hung between them like a guillotine blade. Elsa's scales rippled, a dragon's involuntary physiological response to fear. "I'll figure something out," she whispered. David made a decision that would either get him commended or court-martialed. He extended his hand. "I'm David. I work at the terraforming station. I have a spare room and a food synthesizer that makes excellent protein paste. It's not charity. I could use help with my botanical calculations. Dragons are supposed to be exceptional at pattern recognition." Elsa stared at his hand as if it were a complex equation she couldn't solve. In her short life, she had learned that adults who offered help usually wanted something in return, but starvation has a way of overriding suspicion. She placed her small clawed hand in his. The spare room in David's habitat module had been designed for storage, but it had a window that overlooked the colony's biodome gardens, acres of engineered vegetation struggling to convert this dead rock into something livable. Elsa stood at that window for an hour, watching the artificial sun track across the dome's interior. "It's beautiful," she said finally. "The photosynthesis efficiency must be remarkable." David smiled. Most children would have commented on the colors or the flowers. Elsa calculated carbon conversion rates. Over the following weeks, a routine emerged. David would leave for his early shift at the terraforming station, and Elsa would spend her mornings studying from his digital library, devouring texts on xenobotany, atmospheric chemistry, and orbital mechanics. In the afternoons, she would solve the complex mathematical models that David brought home, problems that usually took his team days to crack. Elsa would have them completed before dinner. "You're not just good at math," David said one evening, reviewing her work on a nitrogen fixation algorithm. "You're brilliant." Elsa's scales flushed a deeper red, the dragon equivalent of blushing. "My mother said all dragons have an affinity for mathematics. It's how our ancestors calculated wind currents for flight before we had instruments." "Tell me about her." And Elsa did. She spoke of a mother who had been a stellar cartographer, who had mapped 3 new systems and had dreams of her daughter attending the prestigious academy on Centauri Prime. She spoke of a father who engineered fusion cores and who would sing ancient dragon ballads in a voice that made the ship's hull vibrate with harmonic resonance. She spoke until her voice broke, and then she cried for the first time since the accident. David held her carefully, mindful of her spines, and let her grief finally emerge from behind the mathematical precision she'd used as armor. 6 months later, David stood in the colony administrator's office, facing down a bureaucrat who had the empathy of a taxation algorithm. "You understand, Mr. Chen, that housing an unregistered minor, even a non-human one, is a serious violation of colony protocols. I understand that a child was starving and I provided assistance." David kept his voice level. "I've applied for formal guardianship under Section 7 of the Sapient Protection Act." The administrator's expression could have frozen plasma. Dragons have different biological needs, different social structures. What makes you qualified to raise one? "What made anyone qualified to raise me?" David countered. "I was an orphan too. I know what it feels like when the universe decides you're inconvenient." The administrator's fingers drummed on the desk. "There's also the matter of education. Dragon children require specialized instruction." "Elsa scored in the 99th percentile on the Academy placement exam," David interrupted, sliding a data pad across the desk. "She's already been accepted to Centauri Prime for the fall term, full scholarship. They want her to study astrophysics." The administrator read the document, and something shifted in her expression. Perhaps the realization that this wasn't some impulsive human rescuing a pet, but a child genuinely thriving. "Fine, guardianship approved, pending standard welfare checks." She stamped the document with more force than necessary. "Don't make me regret this, Mr. Chen." On the transport to Centauri Prime, Elsa pressed her snout against the viewport, watching New Brasilia colony shrink behind them. Her scales gleamed healthy and bright, her wings no longer cramped but folded with the confidence of someone who knew they would fly again. "Nervous?" David asked. "Statistically, I should be. New environment, advanced curriculum, social integration challenges." Elsa's tail swished thoughtfully. "But I've calculated the odds of success, and they're favorable." "And if the calculations are wrong?" She turned to him, golden eyes warm. "Then I'll recalculate. That's what you taught me, that failure is just incomplete data." David reached over and gently touched the top of her head, careful of her horn buds. "Your mother would be proud of you." "Both of them would," Elsa corrected softly. And as their ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying a dragon child toward her future, David understood that sometimes the most significant discoveries aren't made in laboratories or on distant worlds. Sometimes they happen when one lost soul recognizes another and chooses not to walk past. End.